I'm all right. Oh, struggled to get sleep last night, so I'm going to try to push past 45 minutes.
Yeah, I had that struggle yesterday, and actually twice this week I've had that struggle. Insomnia.
Yeah, I want to avoid taking anything for it. What do? You just chalk it up as one of those arbitrary nights that you struggle to sleep?
Yeah, basically. I don't know. I have this kind of ongoing thing where about an hour after going to sleep, I'll wake up with adrenaline rush. It's not all the time, but no, I'll just suddenly wake up just paranoid or just like
Mm.
heart will go a million miles an hour and I'll just be freaking out. I haven't ever taken anything for it, but for unrelated reasons, I tried having some melatonin over the last couple months. I experimented with it, and that helped things out a lot. Getting to sleep was a lot easier with it. So it's just a supplement, but
I'm confused. I thought melatonin was like the
or
skin tone.
no, is that not the same name? Is it? That's melanin, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
melatonin is the what your body produces to get you tired at night or whatever. And one of the problems in the I think in the digital age is that the screens, the blue light's supposed to inhibit melatonin creation. That's why the all the computers now have those like night mode things or whatever, blue light modes, night light
It.
modes
I
to
remember
try
it
to.
coming on like maybe twice. Like it's not consistent.
Yeah. Um, and you can have it set based on when the sun goes up and down, or just based on a certain time of day. But I think the idea is to they shut that off in order to make sure that try to reduce the amount of chances that your body won't produce melatonin. But I had anyways. Regardless, I definitely fell asleep faster after taking it and was able to sleep better overall. So I don't know if there's any harmful effects in having it, but I don't know.
Mm.
So you haven't tried anything like that? Or magnesium is another one, or I've had good luck with magnesium sleeping. So
Mm, nah, I haven't really experimented that much. But I mean, it was just last night. It just sucks when you really want to get, say, 8 hours, and like you look forward to it and you're not able to achieve it. That's when it sucks.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally empathize with you there. So, but
Mm, I'm all, I'm pretty much done with my taxes, so I think starting tomorrow, I'll carry out my early morning ritual of working on the passion project. Specifically, it's always the same thing: getting Courier to, well, getting the customer app to receive Courier updates via an Azure listener. So,
I think I had a dream last week that you and I ended up working on a product together to track your taxes.
okay, that's
Or
what you
your,
dream
like all
about.
your last week I did. I think it's just our discussion stuck in my mind. Why don't you use software to track your taxes or whatever to get taxes ready? And I think that stuck in my head. And so when I was dreaming, my mind's like, let's explore what that would look like.
Yeah.
So
Uh, outside of the customer app receiving courier status updates, which I have to do. Um, I have to refactor my event log service so that it relies on the Azure implementation that I wrote like 3 or 4 months ago versus a console app. And need to get the courier. I need to implement this service for a courier getting paid, meaning that they, with their issued bank card, they're able to use it to withdraw money from an ATM based on the commission that they racked up. So
Cool.
yeah, I'm pretty happy that my taxes are pretty much done. That was a major stressor.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you have to give Uncle Sam a big
Yeah,
chunk of money?
yeah. The good thing is I was surprised that I didn't really make that much money in 2019. Then again, I did go like 8 months without gainful employment, so a gift and a
Yeah,
curse, I guess.
I'm thinking about I'm thinking about taking the next month off and just quitting and just having a month off to do nothing like that, or do something. When I say do nothing, it's do stuff I want to do. But
Do a sabbatical.
yeah, and then start up again after I get done with my canoe trip in mid-August. So
You said you're a canoestrum.
my canoe trip.
Oh, okay.
So
You're a fan of what is it, whitewater rafting?
well, I do like whitewater rafting. Yeah, canoeing though too. Uh, this is fun. So
Could I fit in a canoe? Is there a size constraint or a height constraint?
not that I know of. I guess I don't know if there would be. You might not be comfortable in the front seat because it's like there's leg room, not as much leg room, but in the middle or back seats you'd probably be fine. Either steering, or if you're I can't remember what they call the middle person, duffer or something like that. But yeah, yeah, you'd probably be fine.
The River Wild, is that the whitewater rafting? Looks like it. No, no, I just remember a movie called, I thought it was called White River Wild, but it's called The River Wild,
Hmm.
1994. Amazes me what my memory is able to bring to the forefront, even though I don't even think I saw the movie before.
Kevin Bacon. I wonder what river they filmed that on. I've been whitewater rafting. It's a good time. You ever been?
No, I'm black.
What does that mean?
I don't think the majority of black folks, they don't skydive. They don't partake of dangerous recreation except for amusement parks. If you want to call roller coasters dangerous. So horseback riding, whitewater rafting, uh, bungee jumping, skydiving.
Well, I could see those. Whitewater rafting's not exactly that dangerous. I mean, there's some danger to it, but there's so much safety goes into it. Like we had two people tip out of our in the middle of like the biggest one that I think it was a class 4, followed by a really good chunk of tumultuous waters. Two people fell out of our raft. I'm surprised my wife and I didn't fall out actually, but and we just got them back and it was okay. So the only part that ever kind of freaked me out was this one part of the river that the guide knew, and he said, we're not doing anything here. Don't fall out, because if you fall in here, you're dead basically. Because there's this vortex that would suck you. The only way to get out of it would be it'd suck you to the bottom, and the only way to get out of it, you'd have to get out of your dry suit while underwater, um, and then get naked basically, and then it would you would get as you're doing this, and then you would get pushed out the bottom and then come up like 30 feet down the
So I
river or
assume
something.
that there's a body count that vortex has.
No, I don't think so. Not probably from whitewater rafting. Maybe from exploration or something like that. But
In other news, my client put a constraint on me to define a user interface using JSON, which I think I did a good job not venting about why I disagree with it. But man, it's created, if there's a good problem solving interview or interview puzzle, I think it would be unfair to ask someone to do that.
I think it'd be pretty straightforward to do in HTML. I mean,
Well, with XML based layouts, period. But the the blocker that I had in my head was I always thought that valid JSON is always deserializable, and that's just the misnomer, or for lack of a better term, or that's just an assumption that I had. And it sounds like no, you could write you, you could write JSON that passes a JSON validator that won't necessarily be deserialized by your mainstream deserializer libraries. And so,
like no, it can be. All JSON can be serialized by a JSON deserializer. It's just dependent on whether the target objects that you have that you're deserializing to have the requisite fields.
well,
And it's not even the fields; it's just that the types match up.
so
So
within the array body, the types don't match up. There are different controls in the array body.
the only place where you'd I guess fall for, well, no, I guess you're right, because no, you just have to make sure the types match. So like if you had in an array, if you had two values and they both had a field named, like, I don't know, type, and then in one you had a true false value boolean, excuse me, and in another one you had a string, like you'd have to have a type within whatever language you're going to that supports both boolean values and string values to be deserialized to, or to be, yeah.
Well, I'm talking about within your array structure, you declare a button, and the other one you declare uh, a picker control. Completely different properties, right? They have some properties that they share, such as maybe a foreground color for the text,
Yeah.
but everything else is different. And
Yeah,
so,
but that's just, I mean, one of the ways that like if you have an object with all of those properties on them, it's just some that include the union of all the properties between the button and the text box or whatever. You just will get some values deserialized into and some values not deserialized into. You know what I mean? So you could create like a bucket for all possible values. It's just not clean when you get into it's just not super clean when you get into the .NET side of it, or the typed language side of it. So
yeah. So, I think I solved most of it because I just take the JSON and then I serialize it to XML. And then I already wrote the code to parse the XML that was working before all that stuff. Now I just have a issue with um, elements that contain nested elements. Because right now, the way that the JSON serialization works is that it'll take every attribute. How does this work? It'll take every um, label property, or it'll take every label property pair and convert it into an element in XML. And the structure or schema that I have is you have your control, and then it just has a whole bunch of attributes on it, right? So you have your element, and then you have that represents the type of control, and then everything else is attributes, with the exception of controls that have like items in it, right? And then those items are encased in as a nested element or embedded set of elements. So yeah, I burnt like probably 3 hours trying to write all, research it, write it, finesse it, and I think I have like another probably hour left before I have the whole thing working.
Cool. Seems kind of like a big waste of time, but
I agree.
well, I guess I could see it for a really simple version of something where if you want to be able to have I guess if you want the UI to be more data driven forms, I mean, I guess I could see it that way. But
There's a web interface where they can just provide raw JSON, and that's what the web interface expects is a raw JSON string, and then the mobile client takes that raw JSON and interprets it to spit out some UI layout.
yeah, I guess the bit for me that would be tricky is for form elements is getting the data back out and posting that up. Because I assume that there would be, this is for data collection, like you collect data, you got to now grab all of those fields and then put them back into some JSON structure that's definitely variable. So yeah, I don't know. It sounds like a fun thing to tackle, anyways. At least there's some
stupid thing to tackle.
but at least there's some, there's some. It's like a purely technical problem, and it sounds challenging, at least a little bit. So
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Microsoft to provide me guidance on what I sincerely believe is a bug that I logged against their mono runtime in regards to its integration with F Sharp. That was almost 2 weeks ago. That's a blocker.
yeah, it's odd.
That's it. Anything else? I feel like I'm going to tap out in like 10 minutes.
I had another interview on Monday, second interview thing. I haven't heard back from them, which I don't know that if I will or not. I couldn't gauge from the interview whether they were really digging what I was saying or not.
This is with the gaming company?
No, this is someone else. But I'm not sure. After I got done with it, though, and thinking about it after the fact, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that kind of a job, because it's very much doing the same thing I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. So, which kind of sucks, because you get, after working through it, you gain value in that area. So that's where you can, if you keep doing the same thing you're doing, you can collect top dollar out of it because you're skilled in it. But
you would think that.
Yeah, well, you should be able to anyway. I know, actually, I also learned I'm never going to work with a recruiting firm again. That experience is just weird, and it's odd, and I don't like it. But they asked me, like, it was a couple weeks ago, like, what's your price range at? And so I gave them a baseline number. And then he asked me again this week, what are you thinking for compensation for this job? And I go, well, and I gave him something that's like 20K over the baseline. And he's like, whoa, 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 what happened? Why'd you change? What's going on here? And I'm like, well, no, I gave you my baseline. I said, this is my baseline, and I go up above or below it based on what I do,
Did
what I
you
think about the situation.
did you reinforce the dependency on responsibility or accountability as well as your specific skill set and experience?
Well, this wasn't the actual person hiring. This was the what's it called? The intermediate person, the contract firm, the finder firm. I don't know what do you call them? Employment, whatever, recruiting firm.
Headhunter, scout.
Yeah. And I explained, hey, this is within the range I'm talking about. It's not my baseline. I never said my baseline was what I'm going to do, and I just kind of said, well, that's my number.
I was,
So,
I was talking to a recruiter a couple of days ago, and it was a Xamarin job for some West Coast out in Irvine, California. And I think it was a recruiter. I don't think it was the actual company, but like it was for like a kind of startup like incubator helper where like they take ideas and they crank out like demos or prototypes. And with them, she was asking, if I would be available full time. I'm like, I could be, but preferably like 30 hours because I don't want to hang up my other project. And I'm at the point now where I think there's value in having multiple clients versus having a dependency on one client. And then when that dries up or they decide they don't like you or whatever, then you're looking for another job for a while if you're me. So I like having like, but then the catch 22 is concentration and and how much value, how much dedicated value can you really deliver when you're context switching between two different clients? And that's the challenge, right? It's kind of like a catch 22. But what turned me off about them was, and I think it was a headhunter. I don't think a company would actually require me. It's West Coast, and she believed that the requirement was that I work West Coast hours. Like, no, like, no. Uh, I'm, it's not going to be a Friday, and I'm getting off at 8 o'clock in the evening. Like,
yeah,
and I highly doubt that they really need me to work. Based on my understanding of pumping out demos based on whatever ideas, do you really need me to work those hours? Like this, I feel like I don't think it's a maintenance support, you know?
yeah, no, it's
So yeah, that turned me off. Like F that.
yeah. I'd really like to, like, my ideal situation would be a results only uh, type situation where we don't care about the hours, we just care about the results. Because there's times where it works in the opposite way too. Like if you're not on and you're just like, you know what, I'm fried, I'm not going to get any work done. There's no point in putting the time in because you're not going to produce anything of quality. You're not probably going to get anything done. Those hours are just there to fill the requirement. And then when you're on, like when you really are like pumping out stuff and you hit your mark, you're like, well, do I really want to work more than what my 40 hours is, or do I, do you feel almost limited to a certain extent? So
If you're a contractor, you don't really care about that as long as there's an agreement that you're
yeah,
getting paid for every hour that you work.
yeah, the billable thing, which is why, if like in a contract situation, I think I'd be much more excited about value-based pricing, but
Uh, I
it's
think
much
like
harder to do.
I think like 2 months ago, I pumped out like 65 hours in a month, but I was highly motivated. Like it was a really interesting problem, and I was writing it in F sharp. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just, I know I talk about it a lot, but I think, I think staffing companies need to stop filling software engineering positions because I think they're just so disconnected from the reality of the work. How many times on a job description do you see uh, a skill set that requires an entire IT department, or
Yeah.
they'll ask for like 15 years of Azure experience, or um, basically either more years than when the product was actually out, and it's just I feel like their demands are unreasonable. And then a lot with these Indian recruiting firms, a lot of them. I have yet to have one like Indian recruiting or Indian staffing firm offer me a premium rate. I have with English staffing firms housed in like London, right? That's where I was like making like 110 an hour writing F sharp. But like a lot of Indian staffing firms, when I ask for the rate, it's almost always like $55 an hour. I just get pissed off.
Yeah. 55 is not too bad.
It is bad.
I don't know. I actually know. Well, the thing is, I actually like now that you mentioned it, and I've
It'll be
been
like
looking at
55.
salary rates,
It'll
and
say 55 corp to corp.
it,
Like means I still got to pay taxes off that 55. I still have to pay for my business insurance off that 55. I'm getting older now, so like a responsible person would still have to be responsible for their health insurance. Like, no, man.
yeah, I suppose with when you take out benefits, it's really not equatable. Yeah,
I mean, just to someone that's not a programmer and they're just, I don't know, they dig trenches for a living or work at a gas station. Yeah, it's balling. For someone that has hell of experience, made hella mistakes, and learned from it in regards to cultivating reliable software, and has a system or methodology for building sustainable software over time with a low probability of death march, like compensate me for my experience. And I think
yeah,
that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest issue is I feel like they don't know how to. They ask for experience, but they don't necessarily reward or compensate for experience. They already have the amount of money that they have allocated, and they don't really focus on what you specialize in. And if there's a higher probability of, because you've worked in that domain and you probably already have some code that you've already written, that you could do it a lot faster compared to the average junior dev. I'm done venting.
no, I see your point, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I don't think I'm gonna take a job with them, even if I don't think I'll get. Actually, I don't think I'll get an offer at this point. But if I do, I don't. I think I'm gonna turn it down.
Have you ever interviewed with a group of people in which you know one person doesn't like you? Hey, Roman. How you say his name?
Is it Roman?
Okay.
Well, ramen would be Raman, like the noodle. But yeah, no, I guess I haven't had that experience yet.
It happened to me with Quicken Loans. Like, I think I was entertaining the tribunal, but I know one guy. He wasn't a fan of me, and I told like a racist joke, and I think that put the nail in the coffin. I told you that story, right?
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah. I used a character named Tyrone, and I was like, with a name like Tyrone, it's very likely he's going to default on his loan as because they were interviewing me for mortgage-backed securities, and I gave a dissertation on that whiteboard about how it works, but I put in a racist joke, and I don't think it took well.
And it rhymed too.
Oh, the Tyrone and what?
Loan.
Oh yeah. But he every time I would look at him, he would just look at me with like suspicion. And I mean, I don't have anything against them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they interview probably a lot of characters. I think I won everybody else, but I almost know for a fact he was the reason why they didn't extend me an offer. And it was like 4 people um, that served as a tribunal.
Yeah, I suppose that they have a if not everyone's in. But
Have you ever gone out the way to grill someone in an interview? Like, have you ever been an interviewer and just either called BS on somebody or made it harder than you would normally to weed that person out?
no. There's plenty of times I wish I had.
Oh, after y'all hired him or her.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much that actually. We had two of us who were. I think my wife got locked out of the house. But anyways, there are two of us that said no to this person, and then another person who had just been kind of like promoted to manager was like, "Oh, I need a bunch of people." So he was just like and then interviewed him, didn't take our feedback, just was like, "Hire him, my team," and he turned out to just be a total ass. Just, and he wasn't good on top of that, so that like there's no redeeming quality whatsoever to this person. They were just a jerk. So luckily he ended up leaving before they would end up having to fire him. I'm sure that they would have eventually because he was just awful. But
I remember like serving as an architect, interviewing a person, and like now, like I don't care what your resume says. I've interviewed enough people where their resume is more impressive than mine, but when I start asking them questions, it may be fair that they haven't worked with that technology because it's fair to say that to be to be employable, there's times where you may take on different gigs that require different tools. I get that, but he was just giving the wrong answers for common framework specific questions, and I was like, nah, he. These are very basic framework questions. This isn't like gotcha questions. This is like these problems occur all the time, and the framework exposes this feature to accommodate this particular pattern of problems. And like this dude, like this anybody that does this type of work, they just know. And even though despite my recommendation of like no go, the manager hired him anyway. And I was like, and that kind of like it kind of stung because it kind of borderline disrespectful. Like, all right, so you don't value my decision making when it comes to assembling a team, right? I'm going to be held if I'm an architect, I'm kind of like the spokesman between the business and the technicians or developers. Like I'm the one that's going to be the scapegoat, and yet I'm telling you that this person doesn't have the skill set that we need, and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to hire him anyway. After I said don't hire him, like it sends a very very mixed message. So
yeah, well, maybe they were looking for another.
my replacement.
Yeah, maybe they were looking for something else. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, you like you're familiar with data binding,
Yeah, at least a
and
little bit.
I'm not sure if it's really the same s- solution pattern, regardless of if it's web or XAML based. But when your view model exposes a property or exposes when your view model's data type or when your view model's pro- property data type is different from the data type on your user interface control. Um, how do you? An example of that would be like
Visibility.
a bool and visibility, a
Yeah, there's this
visibility
value
type,
converter that you use.
and and I will use that as an example. And I'm like, so how would you perform data binding when your user interface has a control requiring visibility property or data type, but your view model exposes a property that's a bool, and they need to be bound together. And so, like whenever you're doing like WPF or Xamarin Forms, it's a value converter, right? Well, I mean, you may not know that, but
No, I know that.
that's literally the framework
Framework, yeah,
component
value
that you
converter, yeah.
use. It happens all the time. Like this isn't an alien problem. The problem happens all the time, and that is the what you pull out of the toolbox. And you wouldn't believe how many people that are like self-professed Xamarin developers that nope, they'll give a very convoluted code behind implementation answer. And yeah, I'm going off on a tangent. It just surprises me how many people supposedly are very well versed in the framework, and when you ask them very basic questions, even if they've been working in that framework, they completely ignored what the framework provides. So
Yeah. Well, anybody who's ever been given the directive that, in WPF land that, you're supposed to do everything through the view model and not really do much in the code behind, um, has hit, and where they've had the requirement to toggle the visibility of something should have hit value converters. Like it's like
yeah,
101 type of a thing.
I think the issues I think is when you have these quote unquote self-taught developers and they they don't really invest in books. they just they just hack things and write code, right? And so when you hire self-taught hackers and they don't have any type of formal reading material, like the way that I develop my I would like to say expertise in XAML is like I literally bought a whole bunch of books for preparation for the WPF certification, and then I went through the certification exam. But I kept on taking the certification pre-exam over and over again until I consistently hit 90% score, and then I finally took it. So like that's one thing with certifications, you really know trivia questions in regards to frameworks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really read books to learn frameworks or anything like that. I'll read high level books, for patterns or practices kind of books, but never. I don't know if I have one for a specific technology. The closest thing I might have is related to that is like UML in a nutshell and the C book, and I don't even know if I have the C book anymore.
Please tell me you don't write UML anymore.
No, that was back when I was taking, like, when I first got out of college. I'm like, I'm going to be an architect, and at the time the architects were all, diagramming was their thing. So I'm like, well, I obviously have to learn this. And then in college, like, I took some master's courses, and of course the design ones all were UML. And it's not only UML, but it's like trying to do like by the book UML. So
Composition, where you draw the little diamond and then a line.
yeah,
Uh,
aggregation and inherit. And like the thing is, like, those things are helpful. It's like UML is good as far as you can make it so that you can explain something to someone, and that's about it. Like, it
yeah,
doesn't have to be
explaining
perfect.
it, not designing it,
Yeah,
right?
Well, it helps you think too, like, oh,
I've
I did it like this, but
I can appreciate it when it's done and completed, but I've always dreaded sequence diagrams because I always felt that writing a paragraph would be so much easier than
yeah,
taking the time and making sure you have available amount of spacing to draw in the communication paths from left to right with a different. I hate sequence diagramming, and every once in a while I'll get hired by a company that will require me to draw a sequence diagram, and I feel like it's not the best use of engineering time. Like a test is so much more just an automated test. I believe is so much more effective than a visual, right? And like I think some companies or vendors they just draw diagrams just for presentation to look professional for their clients. And the code base won't reflect what the diagram is. And I guess that's my biggest issue is you can draw the most prettiest diagrams ever, but the code base, if you don't, I just think you just need tooling to enforce that.
yeah. I just shared a link because I actually had this happen. Was it last week? Was struggling with a tool for, and I didn't end up using this, but um, I was struggling with creating a sequence diagram just to explain that I wanted to move 2 calls into a different service to just simplify everything and remove an entire layer of complexity. Um, and I started doing the sequence diagram, and I was trying to show the flows, and it became annoying. And I realized that it would be just easier to write this as programmatically and then
Yeah.
just have the sequence diagram be generated off that. So I found this library that does that exact idea, but um,
Since Scala.
yeah. But I think I would want to make one that it would be kind of fun exercise in its GPL to do this in to do something similar in C sharp, where literally you just write C sharp as if you maybe well anyways as if you like you define all the modules as classes or something like that, all the swim lane type things, and then you just have methods on them that you call.
I mean, Visual Studio has their Visual Studio Enterprise. They have what is it called? Is it called callouts? Ah, see, I'm always using professional or community, but
Uh-huh.
Visual Studio, you can like right click on a folder, a library, or the solution, and it'll go ahead and generate the UML for you.
Yeah,
Did you know that?
yeah. I've had Ultimate before and have used their architecture tools.
Yeah.
I mean it's kind of nice, but yeah, that's the thing is the idea. I don't know if you can get a sequence diagram out of those, but to just take a method and
I
just
don't think so. I think it was
write out
showing
the
like
sequence.
composition relationships, and I mean it was your standard UML. It was your class model. Is that what you call
Yeah, which that I could see no problem.
it?
But yeah, I think I might want to use something like this to do sequence diagrams in the future, where I just write the code out and then have it generated off of that, because it'd be so much easier than trying to get those boxes all aligned and crap.
Oh, let's spend like the last 5 minutes talking about because you've been on Twitter for a while, right? Within the past like 5 days.
Yeah,
What do you think about cancel culture?
I don't know. You can now get canceled for not believing in that cancel culture is a thing. I think it's obviously real. Um, I don't agree with it at all. Well, sort of. So I used to the thing is I think that maybe it's taken too far in certain situations, like where there should be discourse, and it's not just people who are unreasonable, like like cancel culture is really stupid. Like I used to say, like, you know, if somebody, let's say, has to make a cake for a gay wedding and they have a personal objection to it and they don't want to do it, like that person shouldn't be forced to make the cake, and they shouldn't have their business shut down because of it by the government. But if people don't want to you know, frequent that cake place because of that, you know, it's well within someone's right to say that this person doesn't make cakes for gay weddings, and for everyone to kind of be like, okay, I'm not gonna buy my cake from that place, which is kind of what cancel culture is, except for I think that there's a second layer that happens where it's like it's like people just are challenging or questioning certain things or make assertions about some things, expecting intellectual dialogue, and they're getting like, no, you're racist, shut down, or you're a bigot, shut down.
The
You
the
know,
only the only reason, well, I think the Supreme Court recently made a decision in which uh like small business has the right to not participate or contribute if it's contrary to their religious beliefs. Um, the thing is that's still discrimination, right? It is the only reason why it's allowed is because United States is a Christian state. That's the only reason.
well, if it was Muslim state, it would be the same way. If it was, you know, any other religion that has it, but I don't. Well, I don't. The thing is that people should have the personal freedom in their business and their choices to do that, though.
Well, okay, so let's take what you're saying, right? And without any of us getting excited, which I don't think we ever like really raise our voice at each other. So it's okay for black people to go to the back of the restaurant to pick up their food. They're not allowed to dine in. Would you say that that's okay because they choose to go to that restaurant anyway?
Well, so let's be clear when I say that it's okay. From a legal perspective, I think it's okay. I
Okay.
honestly think it's
You're
if
about to
you
get canceled.
well, that's the thing. No, I mean that's the thing is I don't the I don't there's a value proposition that people have. So there's a like a fundamental difference between certain sets of people, right? And it's one that I think if you look at evolutionary purposes, like explains a lot of how humans survive, is that you need this like this varied pool of opinions and stuff. But um, there's a sect of people that believe that the self or the person, the individuals, and their rights and decisions, you know, are have primacy over like the herd, right, or the group as a whole. So like in terms of personal liberty, I think that if somebody wants to say, hey, my business does this, um, and discriminates against people, that's to me that's their choice. um, it's not a good choice. It's a bad choice, and capitalism will weed that out because you can't make that choice and expect to get a lot of customers.
uh,
um,
I
but
disagree. I mean, it scientifically it is a choice that they make.
yeah,
Logically, it's a choice that they make. But I I think that it requires the state or the Fed to enforce um, equality, and that's what it is.
but the thing is that then they're choosing what equality is.
It's Let's assume, right? I don't know, I'm not gay, but let's assume that there's a significant number of cases in which people are just wired that way, that it's involuntary sexual behavior, right? It would be fair to say that it probably is because some people have a really difficult time living with it, right? At least back in the day they did. So that would be this discrimination, sexual orientation, right? Regardless of if the Quran or the Bible speaks out against it in violent ways, it's it's discrimination. And if I think the Fed and or the state has a responsibility to enforce equality, right? This isn't enforcing your personal opinions. It's enforcing your biological makeup, your biological behavior, right? And that could be its own debate, but there's so many people that I believe like it's not a decision for them. It's just the way that they're wired. That you have to call that discrimination, right?
Well, yeah,
If you can't really control it, if you can't control your arousal for the same sex, that's the way you're wired. Period.
well,
And
that's what I'm saying is that it is discrimination for sure. I'm not debating that.
okay.
I'm saying that I think that those people have the option, should have the right or the option to do that if they want to, because I think that I value that individual liberty, to have control over your own life and the life of the businesses you do, over any sort of like greater societal thing. Now, that's the thing is that, but I also think that the good use of cancel culture is the remedy to that. It's exactly what you want to use. You want people that are society to, if they believe truly that this is a bad behavior and that you shouldn't discriminate against people, it's completely a good idea to have a boycott or to ask everybody not to go there or to prevent going. So there's a usage of cancel culture in that way, and that it is the natural enforcement of getting rid of that kind of thing. But that's natural. It's other people's choices that are making that happen. It's not a government body coming in and saying that you must do things the way I want you to do it.
The whole reason why we have a government body is to enforce certain things that people may not want to do. The whole reason why Jim Crow doesn't exist in the states as we know it, prior to the 60s or hell, let's say 70s, is because the Fed had to enforce it. The Fed had to install National Guard units, or I know there's National Guards of the state, but the state and the Fed had to enforce it, right? When here's the thing, and we see it all the time. It's a herd mentality, right? You remember back in the 90s, you were probably a kid, but the Hutus and Tutsis of Rwanda, right? Yes, that was government sanctioned, but when you have a herd of people that believe that it's acceptable to do whatever they want because they have reason to believe that some other tribe or ethnicity is taking away their resources. The same thing with Jews and Germany. Like, you can't leave it up to people to do the right thing, because all it takes is a crazy nutcase that is crazy charismatic to lead them down the path of destruction and destroying other people
Well,
and
that's
genocide.
well, that's the isn't that the same? I mean, we're saying that that's the same thing with cancel culture, though, is it's the exact same mentality that could lead down that path. It's a herd of people that think that they are right about something without any sort of political discourse on it.
Yep.
But that's the thing is, we've got to. There's certainly a separation between what legal responsibilities are and what society responsibilities are, and what we want to accept as a society. And I think people, I don't want to get, I could get canceled for believing that, but it's like I don't want the government making those decisions, or having to use that kind of force to make a situation they want to see happen. Like the thing is using the government to protect people is what I want to see, not to proactively force people to be a certain way.
I just think that you
And
can't
protect people in terms of physical harm and stuff like that.
there's governments that have to step it up because of honor killings, right? And I can loosely
Well,
couple
yeah, that's
honor
definitely
killings to cancel culture, right? It's a whole bunch of people that have very strict beliefs or a belief system about how things should be. They can't tolerate someone not uh, conforming or complying with their ideology, and and they get stoned to death, right? They get stomped
yeah,
out to death. Um, I don't know. We agree to disagree. I think the government has an obligation to enforce free speech and to enforce equality, regardless of if people agree with it or not. Because I think the majority of people who really lack education and lack the ability to have a intelligent debate, they shouldn't be in charge of dictating other people's futures.
but
They shouldn't.
that's what the government does if you take away the self. The thing is that all you need is the majority, you know, in a place to enforce your particular ideals and ideas, regardless of whether that actually harms someone or not. That's why we have checks and balances in the government system, is because people are afraid, and that's why the Bill of Rights exists, is because they understand that the majority can become tyrannical, right?
Yeah.
And so the government is ruled by the majority, and so
No, the government's
it's
ruled by
just
the
as equally,
elite.
yeah. Well, the elites then, but it's if you're talking, then we're getting into oligarchy, but they wield a majority of people that will follow them. But the thing is that that's why it's important in my mind that the person's individual liberty and decision making is respected by the government, but society doesn't need to respect it. It's a more of a natural way of looking at things. I don't, um, and I think if you get into that kind of realm, it's a much better world. But
The issue now is people there it's fair to say that there's people out there, and it may be a significant number, that are now scared to share their opinion.
oh yeah, yeah, it's huge.
And if we don't if an opinion, I think, can translate to an idea. And if there are barriers for people to share their ideas, then how are we really going to progress? And the answer is we won't. It will be the people that have the loudest barks, right? That pretty much are going to. It's the most liberal, most. I don't know if you've even had, if you even attempted to like engage one of these people. I did, and I realized very quickly it was futile
Yeah,
because
no, I don't.
their mind, they don't care about seeking the truth. They only care about reinforcing their ego and their belief system, right? And they don't even believe that their belief system can be molded or evolved. They're just stuck. And like I'm looking at some of these people. I know I'm going scatterbrain right now, but I'm looking at some of these people and they have hella followers and they sit in pretty high positions. I was trying to battle this. I wasn't trying to battle them, but I was pretty much saying, like, when they were attacking Uncle Bob, I'm like, well, it's clear that Uncle Bob is disconnected. But instead of destroying him, why don't you help him evolve his understanding of reality? We understand that, quote, he might be privileged, whatever, but like instead of destroying him, maybe you should educate him and help him understand. And like I pretty much said it just like that. They didn't even want to entertain that idea,
Yeah,
right?
no, I
So
saw that. Yeah, and that's the I think what I think that's what the vast majority of people who aren't speaking up on Twitter feel, is that, at least for me, like I grew up in a, or I mean, I grew up in terms of education wise, believing that there should be discourse and that you can have a debate and come to a conclusion. I think what people don't realize with cancel culture is that, or really, when they shut down debates and say, this is the way it is, you're with us or against us kind of a thing, if somebody doesn't believe wholeheartedly in
The
the
whole
same
thing
thing
about
you do,
silence.
well, if somebody doesn't believe wholeheartedly in the same way that you do, they immediately assume then that they completely don't agree with you. Like, I'm not that thing, therefore I must be something else. And they double down on their own. So you're like, you're creating a situation where barriers are kept up. Now, I'm not saying that, like going back to the cake thing and making a cake for a gay wedding, like I like it's totally okay for people to say, I'm going to refuse to use my dollars there, and I'm also going to make sure everybody that I know knows that this is the case, and that I request that they don't, shop there as well. Like, I think that's an important kind of way of doing things, but it's also maybe a good idea to try to engage with those people and the people making the cake, and try to get them to change if you think that they're really on the wrong side of things.
Well, okay. Here's the thing: the people that are not bake, the people that are refusing to bake the cake for the gay couple,
Yeah,
I think it's highly likely that they're not doing it for people. They're doing it because they have a relationship with what they perceive as God, and
yeah,
what God orders them, how God orders them to live their life,
yeah,
and the value and their perception of what God values and what God hates. And
yeah.
so,
And well, the thing is just for the second, I mean, if you think about that for a second, what if what if you assumed for a second that they aren't wrong?
okay,
Because that's what they, in their heads, they're not.
yeah, if
This
you're
is
devout, you're
truth.
devout.
This is truth. And so you're staking their livelihood, like, so what their worldview, this thing is true, and their livelihood, you can attack it and have the government try to shut it down, not just diminish it, but have the government shut it down for something that they have to follow in their own head, like, and that's real to them. So it's like, I, if they weren't, and if, let's just say that they were right, they are right, because you don't know, they could be, um, by trying to force them to not be able to, to do these kinds of things, you're actually damning them. And it's from like a world, like, if you empathize with their situation for a second, that's a scary concept. I mean,
Does freedom of religion trump equality? Or equality is not the right word. Does freedom of religion trump discrimination? And I think that's what the debate is.
yeah, well, but the thing is we also discriminate for other reasons too. It's just, there's, I think people, like I said, should probably have the right to discriminate, but they also have the right. People have the right to not frequent those places or to not engage with them, which I think is different than the militant, than the certain militant cancel culture we get for things like, like Kevin Hart getting canceled from the Academy Awards because he said something racy 5 years ago. Like, come on, or any of, you know,
Imagine Eddie Murphy. He says a lot of things.
oh yeah, and even and you can maybe ding me if this is really out of the thing, but like, if somebody did blackface in a video 10 years ago as part of a skit, like, that's assumed that the person believed in what they were doing then and has not evolved in any sort of way since that point. Like, there's no belief that human people, as you said, can evolve, and that's the thing that that bothers me most about this. That,
Well, if you're talking about Robert Downey Jr., however you say his name,
no, not
that
that one.
movie was hilarious. Like,
Well, yeah,
I don't think he was
it was
making
a
fun
parody.
at all,
Yeah,
right?
it was yeah, it was parodying the fact that white people end up taking a lot of non-white roles, or people that shouldn't be white roles, like whatever.
Yeah.
But stuff like Jimmy Fallon, I think he had a blackface moment, or even like Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, had one,
Hmm.
way back when. And the thing is I think when you perhaps in certain situations, you might grow up in a culture where that was okay, or you never knew why it was offensive, or especially if you're only ever surrounded by white people, which is very easy to be growing up white. I mean, so you can grow and evolve from those situations. There's no reason why you should be like, you know, uh, damned because of
Ostracized.
something that you did. Now, if you do it again now, or if you try to defend it in a way like, no, it's perfectly good, well, then maybe.
Well, look, I understand your point. The first thing I think about was not only the Canadian, what do you call them,
Prime Minister.
prime
I think it's Prime
minister, but
Minister.
also
Yeah.
the wasn't a Virginia
Oh
senator,
yeah, 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 yeah.
senator or governor?
Some Virginia something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and he had the same. They had the same scandal at the same time. Um, I th- I I think that when history reemerges, or when people fact check and they were able to dig up things that people wish were covered up, I do think that it's a time for them to explain what were they thinking then, and to really probe what their ideology is right now. And politicians are politicians, right? They, like any
Yeah,
other human being,
they
they're going
play
to
the
say
game.
whatever they need to say. They're going to, crack a tear. They're going to have their partner with them, holding hands. Like they're going to play the role, right? I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it, because do I think that people learn from their mistakes, and do I think that people are sincerely ignorant, and then as they come in more contact with people, that they grow over time? Absolutely. It's just, with that VA senator, I just view him as a typical older white man in Virginia, and my brain is molded into believing that he probably still views black skin color as something that you can make jokes about, and that's the way I interpret it. But at the end of the day, it's when you wrap yourself, whether you look like a Native American or you look like a African, when you wrap yourself in that type of color, you're making. I believe you're trying to achieve laughter, and if you're trying to achieve laughter, then I think that you are summoning superiority over another group. And that's just the way I interpret it. Do other people interpret it that way? No, they're probably just going to a party and they're just trying to be accepted and have laughs by doing something, by outdoing what someone else might do. The
Yeah,
way I interpret it is you're laughing at another culture, and it might be fun. It might be funny within your peers, because those are your peers, and you don't mean to offend anybody because your peers are predominantly white. But if you start asking for more and more power and influence, it's likely that that's stuff you're going to have to answer for.
yeah. Well,
So,
actually, just as a thought experiment. So when I was a kid for Halloween, I dressed up like a woman once, just for Halloween. Like,
that's
does
all.
that? Yeah. Just to be clear, I don't make a habit of that.
Yeah.
But how is that dissimilar to why is, and this is rhetorical. Why is that different? Or is it like, is it like, I think I may have dressed up as an Indian once as like a Thanksgiving Day thing too, in maybe third grade,
Well,
like an American Indian. But
I guess the question is, when you dressed up as a woman, were you exaggerating the features of a female? Did you
yeah, it
dress
was
up? Did you dress up as a blonde? Did you dress up as what's the barbed wire movie star chick?
Pamela Anderson.
Did you dress up as Pamela Anderson being a quote unquote dumb blonde, or like
No,
did you
I don't
exaggerate
remember
any
all.
features?
Well, I mean, there was hair, there was dress, and then there was balloons. I think is what we used uh, to go that route.
Did you put
Um,
on like a butt implant and boob implants?
no, I don't. Well,
Like, did you exaggerate anything?
yeah. I mean, it was a caricature, right?
I guess where I'm going is the difference, I think, is when you exaggerate a stereotype. Was there a stereotype of a woman that you exaggerated? When you dress up as a Native American or a black person, I feel like you're exaggerating the stereotype of their, if it's a Native American and you dress up as it, how can you not do, oh, whoa, 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 and dance or skip around a circle, dancing, doing that? Like, it might be cute and not very I'm not sure if nefarious is the right word when you're a child, doing a play. But when you're a grown person, I feel like you're I feel like you're enforcing your superiority. You're belittling another uh, group of ethnic people.
Yeah,
And that's
but
just my opinion. It doesn't make it dogma, but it's my opinion.
but I think the thing is that it has to take education and knowledge to understand to the point where like you can do something like that innocently. Like I know for sure that growing up, I mean, I dressed up for Thanksgiving as an American Indian, and I probably did the wah thing, and
I'm sorry for
it's a
laughing.
bit of a joke, but well, no, the
Yeah,
thing is, but that's the thing is like you don't grow up having any sort of context about the plight of other people, or that that it might hurt a feeling or anything like that. So it takes a certain amount of education, um, not to really to come to the conclusion that you personally might not stand behind that. And I don't think and I think that most rational people would come to that conclusion if you don't shut them down immediately for just doing the natural thing, which is to actually defending their own positions, right? That they hold, but they don't maybe know why they hold.
yeah.
So I think that discourse is just like, and the ability to talk to people and understand our fundamental differences and educate is really important.
Well, it's really important to really assess if someone that is in a position of power, the Canadian Prime Minister, the Virginian Senator, if they really should be in that position, if they have a history of dressing up as a joke as people that are systemically oppressed. And that I can't say it any harder than that.
Yeah, and what I think is it depends on the context at the time, and then what might have changed about them. I mean, the thing is like I said, at this point, then I mean, I'm never going to run for politics, and I couldn't. But I mean, and I've made mistakes around this thing that have happened. But the thing is I've wised up over time, and I definitely don't believe certain things that I believed before or whatever. But that's only come through continual learning and education and stuff like that. If somebody took me in any one of those states and started to attack me as I was going through the journey to kind of get over certain things like this, or to learn that I would never do that type of thing again, I would have doubled down on where I was. It's like most people are going to go the hard in the opposite direction if what you come at them with is an attack mentality.
Yeah.
If you come at them with, and I think you might have seen that even with Uncle Bob, is like he's really going hard against cancel culture.
Well, he's being
Because
logical, and they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
logical creatures.
yeah. And the thing is, but I mean, and it's not even about what he was saying in the first, which is like that's a situation that the defunding police thing. Like, I believe the biggest problem that thing has is the fact that they have a bad marketing scheme. Like, defund police is a terrible way to market what they're actually asking for.
The issue that they had with that I believe they had with Uncle Bob in regards to the police was Uncle Bob was licking their boots, uh, in which within that tweet about the police, he didn't acknowledge that police in America have a history, and even modern day of of racial bias, and through data, there is a just like there's a higher probability of being a paraplegic or dying on a motorcycle compared to driving a car. The same data, not the same data, but we have data about what the odds are of you being black and your interactions with the police compared to you being white in your interactions with the police based on percentage. And he just doesn't acknowledge that. And I think that's what these extremists had an issue with. Is he is as if he was praising the police but not acknowledging their growth opportunities. And
Yeah, well,
growth opportunities is something that I'm trying to be. That's a term that I use because I mean I hate cops, but
yeah.
I'm trying to.
But
I
I
have
mean,
history.
that's the thing is like there's a way to get to that point, and I think I've seen the statistic things, and I think was it Scott Adams did a breakdown one day, the guy who does Dilbert, and he drew this out and where this argument goes with the percentages and statistics. So you start off with the premise that you know cops are killing black people. And then what inevitably the counter argument to that is, well, white people die more often to cops than black people do.
Not percentage wise,
They
percentage.
no, they do. There's but just the follow.
Okay.
So if you look at, you are more likely to die um, in terms of there's been more white people killed by police than there has been black people. And
There's
then,
more white people
sorry,
than black people. Yes, I agree
yeah,
with that.
the follow up then is that, well, yeah, but as a percentage of the population, that's the next step, is that as a percentage of the population, blacks are considerably less. So if you take as a percentage of the population, black people are killed more often. But then you follow up with the next one. Well, we're talking about the next step in this argument, and this isn't my argument, I'm just saying, and is, well, there's a higher percentage of black people that are stopped than white people or interacted with in a way. So as a percentage of police interactions, you're more likely to die as a white person than a black person. And that's where the argument ends in terms of not that it's right, but as in, where do we go with this? Because it becomes, well, why are there more black people getting stopped by cops?
For revenue collection. I mean,
Well,
that's initially. That's why I always got pulled over and
yeah,
pulled
that's,
out of
I've
my
gotten
car
pulled
and them
over.
searching my car for drugs. And I'm not even a drug dealer or a
Yeah,
drug addict. It's your the cops are the enforcers for generating revenue for the city.
I know. Oh, and
And who better to collect revenue from people that are not well versed in law?
yeah, and I mean that happens here too in terms of speeding and stuff like that. Um, but the thing is that's where like it ends. So the problem, like if you follow that chain, you could end up in a different places. Like the problem is well, why is there more stops in black neighborhood? And to me, that's more of a socioeconomic problem. It's not a problem with the police. It's the problem with like why is there, you know, why is there more presence there? Does there have to be more presence? You know,
It's a problem with the police. How many do you see as many videos, and maybe I could say viral videos of minor violations, right? Things that aren't really hardcore felonies, if felonies at all, but like misdemeanors, and how bad the police escalate those encounters or those situations, right? So Eric, I don't know what his last name was. Is it Eric Gardner in New York selling loose cigarettes? Gets choked out to death,
yeah,
right?
I'm not saying that's good.
But my argument is, how many times have we observed as a nation, as a people, these what we would consider minor infractions? Yes, they were wrong. Write them a ticket. That result in like just brutality, where the police, if it were the same age person but they were white, there most people would agree there would either be more restraints or there would just be a ticket, and that's it, right? And
Yeah,
it's
and
just
I've
obvious
seen, but I mean, I've seen this happens with white people too, and I've seen videos of it happening with white people. But that's not a necessary, and it might happen at a higher percentage with black people. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm saying that's the thing, is that there's a it feels like there's a broader problem, a different problem. Like the other thing, and I brought this up before, is why is there not excessive amounts of this with Asian or Hispanic people too then?
because they're usually, well, Hispanic people. They're That's a good question with Hispanic people. I mean, they fill up prisons just like black folks in California and Texas
Yeah.
and New York. Uh, so they it's a good question of why isn't the emphasis always on Latinos like it is on blacks? I can't answer that question. I would like to say because they're more scared of black people, like you said last week.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm
I
conjecturing.
mean,
The thing is
we're
that
typically just larger.
larger, yeah.
Go to any Fourth of July or Memorial Weekend, like beach. Go to Las Vegas. Go anywhere, and like these. If you ever go to like any of these events, you could go to like Black Bike Week. Like, dudes out here on the streets looking like they've been in prison for 20 years with just muscles coming out everywhere. So like I feel like African Americans are like treated as if they're the pit bulls of the human race. We all know that pit bulls are not inherently vicious or are not inherently aggressive. They're usually their demeanor or their behavior, their aggression is a product of their owner.
Yeah.
Most people would accept that, right? Because you see white families with pit bulls and like they're normal, right? And I just feel like police specifically treat African Americans as if they're more prone to violence and aggression than any other race. Like I feel like it's very comparable to pit bulls, where it's really unfounded. And instead of focusing on is it really we're more prone to violence and we really can't manage our anger or our emotions, or are we really just like those pit bulls, a product of mistreatment? I think
Well,
I
yeah.
should just leave it right there.
That's well. That's the thing, is it comes down to that's what I said, the socioeconomic aspect of it. I mean, I don't. A lot of the police probably go through a lot of things, and yeah, unfortunately, maybe they've had if they've had one or two encounters with actual bad actors that are black, it might make them scared to interact with or have a higher degree of whatever with other black people. It's natural. And the same thing with white people. I mean, I'd assume that if I was in a really bad white neighborhood in, I don't know, Detroit or
What's
something
a
like
really bad white neighborhood? I never
that.
heard of a unless you're in like
Yeah.
a redneck trailer park. Like what's a bad white
Oh
neighborhood?
yeah, certain trailer parks
Okay,
could definitely be scared of certain,
in the
like there's
South, yeah.
situations where I'd be scared of certain people. But the thing is that I think all this was going down to say this is a complex issue, and I think that when you get to someone like Uncle Bob, and if you start to explore it, you can have these conversations and maybe find common grounds, or find a place to agree on, and or like and he can come to those conclusions, but you have to have engage with him. And I think, if, like I said, canceling or just shutting people down because they don't automatically see things the way that you see them is is a is just as evil. And it's, I guess, now if somebody doesn't agree with you and they militantly are trying to disagree with you, they aren't open to discussion.
But they're
Um,
not open to discussion, and that's the whole point.
but I don't think that's the case with Uncle Bob, though.
No, no. Well, I was talking about the cancelers. They're not open to intelligent discussion at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. I'm
Uncle
saying that
Bob.
cancel culture people, like, they're in the right if the other side starts out as the militant side. Like, not only if you're wrong, but not only that, but we're not even gonna have a discussion with you. You're dead wrong. Well, then
And
you
that's
have the
pretty
right
much
to cancel back.
dogmatism, right?
Yeah,
That's how
but
dogmatism starts, is when people are silent. Like, I mean, this will probably be a crazy butchered example, but was it Copernicus? And I thought it was Copernicus, in which, he was like, nah, son, the Earth isn't the center of the universe. It revolves around the sun, right? And he got burned alive at the stake.
yeah,
And so, like, so everybody just stayed quiet for a couple more centuries, just because, like, you voice your opinion, you get dealt with, and people
yeah,
aren't willing to listen to the evidence or the rationale. They believe what they believe, and you're threatening their belief system. Hence the Catholic Church. So
yeah.
I
But
don't understand how that's still an institution, but I'm not going to talk about it. All the
yeah.
scandals they had. Oh my God.
But I mean, sum it all up though. Like I said, it's, I think, coming at it from the where we're at. It's just defund police is a awful name for something that's not exactly that. Like, it's because you talk to someone and they're like, well, defunding police doesn't really mean defunding police.
Yeah,
They make
I agree.
fun of they make fun of, like, people who don't understand that. And it's like, you call it defund police. Like, do you not understand this? If you It's like a naming problem. It, find a better name for it.
Well, reorg police.
I
I
don't
don't know. Defund is definitely an attention grabber.
Yeah, but I mean, even Black Lives Matter, like, that's another one that suffered from, it's a, like, it's so easy to misinterpret what it means from the name. Like, you get into this thing and you've heard it a million times. Black Lives Matter. Oh
All
no,
lives
all
matter.
lives matter, or blue lives matter, or whatever. But the thing is if it's like, well, of course they do. We're not saying that. Well, then what are you saying? And it's not caked into the term itself, which is like, you take a lot of people who are very literal and put them together and tell them like this, they're gonna be confused.
Yeah, but every single person that I'm aware of, and believe me, like my late mentor, his widow, she said the same thing. All lives matter, and like, I mean, we're like this, right? Uh, they're just disconnected, and she's a prime example of someone that was like born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She's
Yeah,
not race. She's not racist, but honestly, she's pretty ignorant about people that grow up on the other side of America, right? In regards to, like, I mean, you know, knock on wood, I wasn't born to crackheads or anything, but there's people that come up in effed up situations, and they just, what people are disconnected about is the opportunities that Black lives don't necessarily get, that white lives or Asian lives take for granted, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
there are some YouTube videos in which that kind of explain the whole like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, in which like one of the videos where there is a interracial group of folks at a diner, and the waitress starts passing out their drinks, and then everybody gets their drinks except for the black guy, right? And that's and he's like, "What? Black lives don't matter?" And then the friends are like, "No, all lives matter." But everybody was drinking and being having their thirst quenched, however you said the word, except for the black guy. And it was basically, I think he did a good job explaining it, that it means, or I believe it means, that there's supposed to be equality, but it's obvious that in reality there's not. They're not necessarily, they're still not treated as first class citizens. They still aren't treated with as high a priority as white folks, and that's what it means. But people that say
yeah,
that all lives matter, they're so disconnected. They literally don't even observe the discrepancy.
yeah,
So
and that's the thing, is that goes back to what we said, is that the difference between that person and somebody who does is literally needing to be educated, or not needing or having to be, but having the opportunity maybe to be educated or to see it. That's the difference. But like, if you attack that person for all lives, then they're doubled down. Like then it becomes dogma to them. Like,
yeah.
but it's the thing, is like, there's an inherent, just within the linguistics itself, there's a inherent like opposition to the idea of Black Lives Matter, just in the way that it's phrased. It has nothing to do with the actual content. I think if you took anybody and they understood what it actually meant, they're like, okay, well, that makes sense. You know, as long as they're given the opportunity to get to that point. And I think that's the same with defund police. I think, yeah, let's look at and investigate why this is happening on multiple fronts and solve it. But that's not necessarily happening by defunding. It might be part of the situation, but, and I think, to maybe it was Uncle Bob's point, is that for those of us where the police actually work for us or works out, where we're not in that position, defunding sounds like a terrible idea. And so, I mean, just swap into that position for a second, where, let's just say tomorrow it was flipped, and like the police worked for black people way better than they worked for white people, and that was a fact. Let's just say, like, how would you feel about someone being like, defund, just get rid of police because we don't like them? And when it becomes down to like like, if you put yourself in a position like, well, no, that sounds like an awful idea. Like, you would come to that same conclusion.
Well, yeah, if serve and protect really means white folks,
Yeah. Well, yeah, but the
because
thing
I'm
is,
not convinced it means black
yeah,
people.
it just happens to be that, yeah, the thing is like, we were born with the skin color that made it so that it works for us. But to just, and then to say defund it, like it like, you have to, like, we come from just a situation where we have our own understanding and things, and you come at it with, or black people come at it with a place where they understand things and stuff, and like, our conceptions of defunding police, and it's not just all white. Like, I have at least 2 or 3 people in my family who are, absolutely hate the police, just doesn't work for them. They've been harassed and pulled over, and the one has whiskey plates now, and so he really gets it all the time. And so they really hate this. But for those of us who are like just white and law abiding and stuff like this, it's like, oh no, I like having the police there. I want to know that it's
Yeah,
safe. And
but you already acknowledged that that's not what it really means, right?
yeah, that's the thing, is that, and I think if you take the time to actually talk to someone, or maybe just if whoever came up with that idea took more time to think about how do we frame this in a way, how do we frame it so it's persuasive and it actually people can get it. There's got to be an answer to that, but defunding is not one.
Yeah.
um, and so I think it's a marketing problem is really what all this stuff comes down to. But yeah, so anyways, I don't know. It's getting kind of late now. I took the day off, so I don't really have to be anywhere.
Yeah, it's weird because I was only imagining being on here for half an hour because I wasn't feeling talkative, and then we went on for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, you get into talking about substantial topics where, and you can discuss it and not have someone get mad at you or try to shut you down. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I think I do reasonably well, not letting my emotions take over. So
Yeah.
sometimes I have to like consciously just bite my bottom lip and just listen. But yeah,
Well, no, I mean, yeah, yeah. So if you ever get mad, just let me know. I don't really ever get. I don't think I get mad about discussions as long as somebody really just doesn't try to shut it down.
it's not really getting mad. It's more of uh, when you believe that you're right, you kind of want to talk. You kind of want to like let that be known instead of patiently waiting for the other person to express their thoughts. So I'm guilty, and I've been dealing with this probably my whole life. Of as soon as someone says something that triggers something that I want to counter, instead of me listening to them, I'm already formulating. I'm ignoring what they're saying, and I'm formulating my response. I don't know if that could really be resolved, right? It's something I've always struggled with.
Yeah,
So
I think I have that same thing too. But the thing is to hold a conversation, you kind of have to do that, right? Like if you're trying to have a counterpoint argument or have a discussion, it's really difficult to be like, okay, I hear what you say. Now I'm going to sit here and think of my response for the next 30 seconds awkwardly.
well, the
Squat.
politicians, when they debate, you see them just writing in their notes as they keep listening, and then they just keep track of every single thing that the other politician said that they're going to attack or respond to. So,
Yeah.
but
So
that's a formal debate, not
I,
a
w-
casual conversation.
I wonder if that has to do with anything in the way, because there's people think differently, in terms of like there's people who have dialogues in their head, and there's people who see pictures, like, and that's how they think. Like I think like dialogue, like I have to talk to myself in my head a lot of times to really put together my thoughts. And I just wonder if maybe people who rely on imagery thinking, are more fluid or less. I don't know. I'm just conjecturing about
I didn't
the
know people
complicated
relied
human.
on imagery for debates.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know how. So do you have like a voice in your head? Like, do you have a conversation?
uh, I think I told you that when I read anything that's informative, it's a white voice, a white narrator that reads to me.
Okay, but there's a voice but like, do you hear yourself talk in your head? Like, if you're just sitting back and think about,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. So there's people that don't do that. Apparently they don't hear their own voice in their head. They don't think in words at all. They think in imagery and pictures. And that's what they see. When you hear your voice talking, they see things being generated into images. It's weird. And we all do this to a certain extent, but I guess it's just different because I'm not weird. I'm just not, I can't fathom what it's like. But I also once interviewed somebody who there's a term for this. They hear in color, I think is what it was.
yeah. I was actually listening to a podcast a couple days ago. It's weird that you bring it up. I forgot what the scientific term is, but yeah,
Like that's just so like I can't imagine how that like
like this guy was like I think he used to practice the piano at a younger age, and he would like hear in color.
I can't even imagine what that would be like. How do you like hear in something that's visual? It's like So, man, our brains work different. I suppose it's time to.
Well, I mean, we're wired. There's something that said we are wired for colors, right? So red is always
Yeah,
danger. You're seeing red, right? Green is always like encouraging and rewarding.
yeah,
I don't know if how often, if any, have you like felt like you were going to have a meltdown and you just needed to like sit on grass or go to a park and just clear your head.
yeah,
Like I remember when I was living like Manila, Philippines is a concrete jungle, and there was one time where like I was just having a really difficult time, and I literally just caught a taxi just to sit on some grass and chill, right? So I say all this because I think we're hardwired towards colors, but hearing in colors, I don't know if you're on some psychedelics, probably.
yeah. I don't know what that's like. Did we get more comments? We did. You must have responded.
Yeah. So it's a good conversation. Roman, Ramen, it's been real. Is there anything else Ramen wants to say before I hop off? I have my status meeting in 15 minutes.
Yep. All right. Well, have a good one. Talk to you next week.
All right, Shawnee, it's been real. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. And I'm out too. Peace.